What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the college basketball weekend betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me today is two of my friends, Greg Waddell and Mr. Jim Root from the Three Man Weave. Us three will be taking you through the weekend each and every Thursday through the NCAA tournament. We will follow, if you listened last year, similar format. We will, just give our high-level thoughts, futures roundtable. We will build a portfolio of futures, add one every Thursday. We will obviously talk about our spots that we have circled for Saturday and or Sunday. And we will have a little buy low, sell high, teams that we're looking to buy or sell coming up. And then we might have another topic or two based on what's going on in the sport. This week, we'll talk a little, start very high level for the first episode. We'll go through, let's call it the top 20 or 25 teams on KenPom. And I'll just ask you, we'll go down the list. I'll ask you, can this team win the national title or not? And we'll see where we disagree. Gentlemen, how goes it? Jim, I'll start with you. Based on, compared to a normal year, are you more or less excited about this potential field come March?
I think I'm a little more excited because it doesn't feel quite as top heavy. I know Michigan and Arizona have kind of earned their rightful seats as 1 and 2, but I think the teams like 3 through 15 are all really good. I would say we might have a comparable year to last year where the opening round of the tournament might not be all that exciting. Your 13 through 16 seeds may not be pulling the upsets that some of the casual fans may be looking for. But I think we're going to have awesome games from especially Sweet 16 on, their Elite 8, Final Four. We haven't gotten a lot of them yet, like the Big 12, the Big 10. Their schedules are really backloaded this year. So you get a lot of high-level matchups coming in late January and February and at the beginning of March. And I think those are going to set the table for what should be an awesome, second, third weekend of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, look no further than Kansas, who has a rivalry game on the road this weekend, and then it's start January 31st through the end of February. It's Arizona twice, Houston, Iowa State, BYU. It doesn't get much more brutal than that. Greg, how about you? Are you more or less excited about this potential field than usual?
I think more, just to Jim's point, I feel like there's a legitimate 15, 16 teams that if they make a Final Four run, I'm not going to be surprised whatsoever. I think you do have some of the beauty of, the Final Four we got last year was really fun when we got there, even though it was chalky. Those were really high-level games, and we may end up with similar if Michigan and Arizona can hold their end of the bargain. But, we're coming off a college football season even where it kind of felt like there was parity, and in the end, there was like the sleeping powerhouse giant the entire time in Indiana. I won't be surprised if we look back and feel like there's a team staring us in the face right now that isn't Arizona or Michigan that maybe should be. But I'm looking at the ACC and the Big East a little bit, not as strong nearly as the Big 12 and the Big 10. Maybe the favorites in those conferences could be those teams that we are overlooking when we just start to see them play some upper competition.
Yeah, we're going to start. Well, Arizona will get. They've been tested a bit, but they're going to get tested a lot more coming up here. We'll talk about them. Although, Michigan looked like, all right, they're going to be this team this year, but they've come back down to earth a bit. They were never going to be this elite 3-point shooting team. If they go through a stretch where they're making 45% of their threes, then yeah, they're going to be a problem for almost anyone. And obviously they're still in the mix, but they've looked a bit more mortal over the past month. And Arizona, still fairly young, right? You don't have Caleb Love to shoot you out of games at least, and you do have Bradley, who is in a year where there's a ton of a great point guard play. He's up there as the guy that you want closing out games, and their front line is amazing. But they start 3 freshmen. Do you know when the last time the team won the national title with 3 starting freshmen?
15 Duke is my guess.
Nope. Before then.
Didn't they start Winslow, Jones, and I guess Jones was a sophomore? Was he a sophomore?
2012 Kentucky with Anthony Davis.
Wait, I'm protesting that. Tyus Jones, Justice Winslow, Ja Okafor. I'm protesting.
Let me look.
2015.
That sounds right to me.
Hold on. I'm going to look.
I was at the game and a sad Wisconsin fan. That's the only reason it stands out to me.
I was a sad Kentucky fan that we. Actually, I wasn't.
Yeah, fair.
At the time, but before
fair
that,
point.
let's see.
I'm throwing a wrench in the process already.
You're all right. And by the way, I didn't even get that stat. I pulled that. I heard that on the broadcast. They showed that graphic last night in Arizona Cincy.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'm coming for ESPN or Fox Sports 1's head there.
Was it maybe? Did they? Yeah, because they also had Grayson Allen, but he didn't start. No, Jones started 39. Okafor started, and Winslow. No, you're right. I'm going to have to contact Fox Sports. Great call.
There we go.
All right, we'll go through the top 20 and 25 in just a moment, but let's do a little rant of the week. And you can go anywhere with this. You can complain, yell, or you can praise, or just talk about any topic you want in the sport. I will start. I have to complain about Kent State. I mean, this Miami Ohio team, I've lost some money fading them at times. All you had to do was inbound the ball, and you avoid overtime where you just knew that Miami of Ohio was going to take over. But Kent State, I mean, it was an amazing comeback. They survived the foul trouble with their best player in Gillespie. Can't inbound the ball. 80% free throw shooter, misses 2 free throws. And then Miami of Ohio ties it with a pretty crazy layup to force overtime. And Miami of Ohio, one of the coolest stories of the season so far, stays undefeated. They hit a buzzer beater against Buffalo and then win in overtime and then do it again against Kent State. Kent State manhandled them on the glass. I hope I can get a second crack at Kent State again at Miami of Ohio. But what a story. I mean, the Miami of Ohio offense, you can't deny. They move the ball extremely well. They have shooters all over, and they are now 20-0. And, Jim, I have to also – Tuesday night was just a lot of pain. I also had Missouri money line, and they lost on a crazy layup with 5 seconds to go. Surreal turned into somehow Steph Curry at the line in that game. So those were 2 annoying losses, but that's what happens in college basketball. Greg, how about you?
I'm tired of Mick Cronin's shit, and I think everyone is, but I just need to take my first opportunity on BBOC of the year to address this. Do you know how hard it is to make Donovan Dent not fun? Mick Cronin has found a way to do that, and it was fun this week, of course. Great, nice performance. He outplays Braden Smith. That was electric and awesome. This entire season is just driving me crazy from UCLA. They're a spot below Darren DeVries's miserable Indiana team right now on KenPom. They are posing as if they're some legitimate threat in the Big Ten Conference simply because they never lose at home. He's whining that they have to go out of their time zone for games in a conference that he knows the schedule 6 months ahead of time in. Meanwhile, he didn't schedule one non-conference game outside of the Pacific time zone. So it's just this monster paper resume that I feel like is being held together by a thread. And now he gets the stamp of we upset Purdue because the best point guard in the country turned it over twice in the final 2 minutes. It's just gross, and I'm sick of it.
Are you excited for his response when he has to go to Michigan, Michigan State, and back home to face Illinois in a week span? He's going to be a riot after that one.
Can't wait.
I will say that was Dent's best game of the season. Now he's had a couple of flashes here and there, and then a couple games where you're like, I mean, he doesn't score in like 30-35 minutes. So Ken, I mean, it seems like it's like a rocky relationship, right? Where like it's a marriage on the rocks and they still have, there's still a spark there every once in a while. You go on a date night, but then it always ends in an argument, and things turn rocky again. So maybe they turn this marriage around, but I definitely need to see it on a more consistent basis before I really start to buy into this UCLA team. Jim, how about you? What from the week that was?
For me, it's a little actual forward looking, and it's sort of just conference season in general. And a couple people always mention this, but the scheduling of 150 games Saturday and like 12 Friday drives me nuts. We're finally shifting it a little this week, and it's because Mother Nature is sending an act of God through the entire United States. So we have like 10 to 15 games moving up from Saturday to Friday. And I just want that more balanced. Why can't we do like 50 and 100 instead of 10 and 150? I don't know. That doesn't add up. But I just wish there was a little more balance to the schedule. I love a Saturday that's wire to wire. I live in Central Time Zone. It's 11 a.m. to past midnight. But I don't need 150 games. I'm just begging a couple of these conferences to seize those Friday night opportunities. The Big Ten's done it a little bit. Even a little more Sunday would be okay with me. I just want to see the schedule spread out a little more. And maybe I'll rant about it again every week on this show, but that's what I want.
Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, my Friday nights are obviously my life gets a little less hectic once football ends. And I'm still catching up on college basketball from this year. I mean, football gets tougher. It gets tougher each year to catch up on college basketball. And I had a kid last month, so I'm still catching myself up. But the Friday nights before these cards, there is no sleep in sight for me on a Friday night. So yes, it would be nice just for my life to have them spread out to go through all these games. That is something worth noting, though. You mentioned the weather. I haven't even looked at the updated schedule. Any noteworthy like big games moved up? Because I imagine we're probably going to get some cancellations.
Yeah, I would think so. I think it's a lot of mid-major, like the Sun Belt's moved a bunch of games. The A-Suns moved a bunch of games. I think the MAC may have moved a few. I haven't seen any big moves in the power conferences, but I would keep an eye on people are going to be listening to this hopefully Friday morning. There's a couple teams that are playing back-to-back Thursday, Friday because of the schedule and the way it moved, having to travel in 24 hours. I would maybe take a look at some of those spots. If you are able to listen to this in time, check those out. And if there's teams that I think I actually have one of my 5 spots circled is a game that moved from Sunday to Saturday in the Missouri Valley. So I think those condensed schedule or surprising moves are going to actually be advantageous, specifically for the home teams that don't have to travel in that regard.
Yeah, definitely worth noting for this weekend. Something extra to keep an eye on. It also seems to be flu season, so there's spikes in flus. I mean, just look at that Kentucky-Texas game last night. Chandler ended up playing. I mean, maybe you should have the flu every game. He ended up playing probably his best game. But then you had Cam Heide, who was a surprise scratch. He was out. Well, I guess he tried to play in the second half, but he had a sick bag on the sideline. So something else to keep in mind as well.
One of those that falls in that category is the Warhawks, Louisiana Monroe, who gave up 115 to Marshall tonight and now have to go to App State tomorrow, who is also playing back-to-back but was at home both these games. That's a good one I'm circling tomorrow.
Monroe is miserable. All right, before we get to our futures roundtable, and for those that are new to the weekend show, and if you haven't already, make sure you check out the same schedule. We're going to keep the same schedule earlier in the week. Get Duck, Breeze, and the gang with a midweek episode. Jim, 3-man regroup with the early week episode. So we'll still have 3 episodes a week. But if you're not familiar with the Futures Roundtable, we each bring one future to the table, make our case, and then we all vote, but you can't vote for your own. If it ends in a tie, I'll break the tie just because I've been here longest, so claiming seniority. Although maybe I'll make the producer. Maybe this year I'll make David. I don't even know if he listens to college basketball. Maybe I'll make him break the tie based on how convincing our arguments are. But I want to start, since this is the first one, I want to start high level. And the 2 questions I'll ask you, the first, right off the bat, you got to give me, if your life is on the line, I'm going to give you these 3 groups of teams, and you need to only take one. And if they win the national title, one of those teams wins the national title, you're safe. You can continue watching college basketball. If not, you're done. So life on the line. I'm going to give you, and I'm sorry, Nebraska, we're just going to go with the top 10 the top 5 on KenPom on the Big Ten. So Big Ten, Michigan, Illinois, Purdue, Michigan State. You get the top 5 in the Big 12. I'm sorry, Texas Tech, you just missed. But Iowa State, actually, no, we can put, I think Texas Tech makes it. Iowa State, BYU, Houston, Arizona, and Texas Tech. So you have the top 5 in the Big Ten, the top 5 in the Big 12. And I think everyone would agree, as far as the top of leagues, 1 through 4 or 5, those are far and away the best. You mentioned, Greg, you didn't even mention the SEC. The SEC is way down this year. Now, from top to bottom, what's South Carolina on? I don't know, 60th or something? Like, top to bottom, the depth is really good. But the high end, the top end, you could argue that there isn't a top 10 team. Now, Florida, we'll talk about them. But I could see someone making a case. There's not even a top 10 team in the SEC. Because Tennessee is down, Kentucky's down, Ole Miss is way down. There's a lot of these teams are taking a step back. And Tennessee, last year, the SEC was historically good at the top, right? So it was to be expected that it takes a slight step back. The Big East also, after the very top, it gets ugly quick. So we'll take, and then we'll have 5 from the other group. So we got top 5 Big 10, top 5 Big 12. The other group, we're going to take, let's say, Duke, Gonzaga, UConn, Florida, and let's throw in, I guess we'll keep it on the next best team on KenPom. So we'll throw in Virginia. So the other group, you're getting the top of the rest. Jim, I'll ask you first. Life on the line. Are you taking the top 5 in the Big 10, the top 5 in the Big 12, or the top 5 from the rest?
I'm going to go with the Big 12. That's where I'm going to land. It's a debate for me between the Big 10 and the Big 12, but I have to remind myself the Big 10 hasn't won a title since 2000, and that's, of course, very predictive for this season. That's how that works. But it's just that top group with the Big 12. Arizona, I have them rated slightly ahead of Michigan right now. I know KenPom doesn't agree, but I think they're the best team in the country. Houston is coming on fast. They right now have the best offense and the best defense in the Big 12 in league play, and that's a conference that has Arizona in it. They have been unbelievable so far in conference play. Iowa State, really, really good, is one on the road by 15 at Purdue. BYU, if you're letting me choose my 5 from the Big 12, I actually might discard BYU and take Texas Tech and Kansas. But I think you give me any of those two, I think there's real ceiling upside. The individual talent on all 3 of those teams is just remarkable. You're getting lottery picks, you're getting All-Americans, no matter which team you choose. So I think the depth and the top end strength there of that 5-some is the one for me. Greg, where do you land?
It's the Big 12. I'm a little bummed you picked it, but I knew you would as soon as you dropped the line. I just knew that was coming. No, I think there's a couple. Even not that head-to-head matters at this point in the season, but I can't get that Iowa State Mackey Arena stomping of Purdue out of my head. And I still think there's a world Purdue is the class of the Big Ten. Michigan looked great in November, and they are still very good. They have a baseline that is very high floor, but that team is erratic and just can't put it together for 40 minutes. I think, Illinois and Michigan State make this interesting. I see both those teams as Final Four caliber teams much more than I do national title teams. Illinois seems to always stumble their way into adversity. That's happening again with the Kylan Boswell injury. Michigan State, you just will never convince me that offense is going to be the national championship winner. They might grit and grind their way to a national title game, but at some point they're going to run into a team that's just bigger, stronger, and can do that better. So Arizona, Houston, Iowa State, to me, have as good of a shot as a Michigan or even a Purdue would. And then Kansas and Texas Tech are, at least to me, not behind the lower group of the Big Ten.
Yeah, that's a consensus. I'm taking the Big 12 as well. And I guess I forgot, the Nebraska does make the Big 10 cut as the 15 with Michigan State. I don't think this Michigan State team can win the national title. We'll talk about that in a sec. Purdue, I do think, Ken, but they still have some 2-point defense issues. Like their defense, there's still some holes there. Obviously, I think that they can win it all. But and then Illinois, yeah, we have that Boswell injury. We'll see. Maybe it ends up paying off in the long run as they just continue to develop more depth. And Michigan's obviously in the mix. But I think the Big 12 is the answer. Although the pedigree and the coaching in that other category is definitely intriguing, along with some high-end talent with Duke, Gonzaga, UConn, Florida, and Virginia. But let's get to – I guess I'm going to go through. You guys raise your I'm going to you speak up if you do not think that – if you cannot envision this team – raise your hand, I guess. So hand up if you do not think this team can win it all. I'm just going to go through the top 25 on KenPom. Michigan, Arizona, Duke, Houston, Iowa State, Purdue, Gonzaga, Illinois, Michigan State. We all agree there.
Yeah.
I just they don't have the consistent enough offense, and there is something to be said about Izzo's 3-point defense. If you go back 20 years, I can always say well, their teams are eventually going to start hitting shots because they give up the 3 a ton, and then it seems like every single conference play, teams are shooting 28% from 3. Well, if it's happening for 20 years, there's something to that. But I think their bigger problems are on the offensive end, and I just don't think that they can match the high-end teams. Jim, you agree there?
Yep. Yeah, last year I think they had a little more of a game breaker with Chase Richardson, and I think they can rebound and defense their way to the Final Four, but against one of the other elite teams, I think they're going to struggle a little bit. And they lost at home to Duke down the stretch because they couldn't score. Duke had the final 5-minute run in that game to kind of extend it, and they lost at Nebraska. And we'll see when they play Michigan, when they play Illinois, when they play Purdue. But I think it's going to show up a little bit in there, just not having that high-end scoring offense. It's a little too much fears creation.
Greg, you want to add anything on this party?
It just feels St. John's-y from last year. This defense is for real. But winning 6 in March, we know is different. You've got to be able to make shots. I actually think they're shooting it better than I expected from outside this year, especially when Trey Fort isn't really in the rotation and he was expected to be. But I look at the personnel, Fears and Carr on the floor for an entire game together with Carson Cooper and Jackson Kohler, who, to his credit, was shooting 53% from 3 for 2 months. If there's any regression there whatsoever, I think this comes to a screeching halt soon.
Regression 1 for 11 in his last 3? That's what it sounds like to me.
We're off to a start.
Yeah, I mean, when Tang is making threes, that's when I think their offense is most dangerous. But can Jackson Kohler keep shooting 50% from 3 too? He's way improved there, but I doubt it. Florida, I'm going to raise my hand. I can make an easy case for Florida. I mean, Florida, going back, obviously they're so well coached. You can look at some of the flaws they have, they get fixed. I think I saw a tweet today about one of the worst lineups in all of college basketball, all of college basketball this year. Florida had it, one of their starting fives, and in their losses, they were a minus 65. We haven't seen those guys play together once in the last month. You know that they are so analytically sound. They have one of, if not the best front court in college basketball. Chinalu's emergence as an offensive force, I think, has been a surprising development. And if you filter out since December 1st, Florida's been a top 10 team despite horrible 3-point splits. I mean, they can't hit a 3 and teams are hitting 3s against them regularly. I'm going to take a stand, though, and say that backcourt is going to get got. They're going to run into one of these teams with another elite front court, and then their backcourt is going to get outplayed in Fland and Lee. So I think that's where Florida eventually gets clipped. So I'm going to say no on Florida. Jim, am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. I will point out that they have the best offense and defense in the SEC right now, despite, as you mentioned, shooting sub 30 from 3 on their own end and opponents shooting over 37%. So if you were able to tilt those scales evenly, they'd be completely smashing that conference. The problem is the conference isn't all that good this year at the top end. So that kind of undermines the argument there. Boogie Fland with a haircut and Xavier Lee wearing 99 though, then they got a chance. Suddenly it looks good for Florida's backcourt.
Yeah, maybe I need to incorporate that. I mean, I will say on the road at Duke, they lost by 1. They lost by 4, semi-away game against Connecticut. But, I mean, since that UConn loss, they've looked a lot better. I'll give you that. And they've had bad 3-point splits. But their wins are GW, St. Francis, Colgate, Dartmouth. They lost at Missouri. Georgia, Tennessee, who's way down. Oklahoma, Vandy, and LSU. Now, Vandy's a good win, but they match up. I mean, their front court can just dominate Vandy, and that's where Vandy's biggest weakness is. So I'm still not all the way there yet on Florida, but I can see why anyone would obviously make the case with the defending national champs. All right, we're gonna keep going here. UConn, I have to give Hurley his respect, but I could definitely make a case against them with their offense. Greg, you raised your hand.
I'm making the case. I'm out on this. I'm doing it. I have watched too many of these stinkers against just terrible teams that won't even qualify for the NIT in the last 2 weeks. I think, and I hate that I'm going to get pitchforked from the entire world for this. I know I am. If Dan Hurley's not the head coach of this team, none of us are taking them seriously. That's where I'm at with this. The entire argument that we are all going to hinge our wagon to on this, and I will too, is that we believe Dan Hurley is the best coach in the game and he could go on Superman mode and just drag this team there. I just don't trust their offense whatsoever. I don't think they generate good shots. I think Demery is capable, but he comes and goes, and I think everyone else on that team cannot get 2 feet in the paint. Solo ball has been a disaster this season. And ultimately, just saying it out loud, it's a team whose best player is Terrace Reed, and he's great. But even he, in his great games, has stretches where he gets outplayed by significantly worse bigs. I just can't add the formula up of who's on the court for this team. I don't trust their depth. It's just Hurley. The argument is always it's Hurley. And they're about to run the table in the Big East, by the way. Okay, they'll drop one somewhere. But there's a good chance this team's going to be on the 1 line because they're going to end up 27-4 or better, barely losing to anybody good because they play 2 games against top 25 teams the rest of the season. I'm out on this. This specific version of it, I'm out on this.
Yeah, you mentioned Reed. You also have to worry about him staying out of foul trouble in games. But we did see UConn earlier this season against higher end competition, teams that are going to be on this list. They beat BYU. They, close loss against Arizona. They beat Illinois. They won at Kansas. They beat Florida. But the problem is, I do have some problems with their offense, and I don't know how much we're going to learn more about them with how down the Big East is the rest of the way. Maybe they lose at Creighton every year. Maybe that's the beginning of those, maybe at St. John's. But, yeah, the Big East is way down. Watching Marquette is just a sad experience. Jim, thoughts on UConn?
Yeah, the wins they had in the non-con, most of them away from home, are why they're top 3 in the country in wins above bubble. And the loss to Arizona was without Reed and without Mullins, and they still almost got the number 1 team in the country at home. But yeah, the fact that they're beating Georgetown by 2, Seton Hall by 5, DePaul by 12, Providence in overtime, they're really, I don't know if they're bored by how bad the conference is. And typically, even the 23 title team with Hurley had a real dip in league play before dominating the NCAA tournament. Maybe there's something to that, the familiarity of Big East coaches with each other and the sets that UConn runs. But yeah, there's just not a lot of pop and pizzazz to them right now. It's they're just kind of grinding through, waiting to get to March.
Yeah. All right, here's an interesting one. Virginia. No,
I don't think they can. I don't think the individual talent's quite high enough. I love them, but yeah.
I will say, that I did not expect them to be this good. It seems like that roster was just put together very well. And Chance Mallory as a freshman has been great. Malik Thomas has been great. And DeRitter as a freshman, their rim defense, Grunlow and DeRitter, their rim defense is legit. They get great shots. They move the ball extremely well. They will be a tough out. under Ryan Odom. But I tend to agree with you. I mean, I don't think that the higher end talent is there, but an impressive stretch nonetheless. Going to Louisville, I know they've been a bit fortunate on this stretch. I mean, NC State couldn't hit an open shot to save their lives.
They're since January 1st, they're number one in the country at Bartorvik, but that's obviously a fairly limited filter right now. It's only 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think do you agree, Greg? Virginia probably doesn't have the high end talent.
Yeah, I'm going to make an argument later in the show that they can make a Final Four run, though. I'm very
for sure.
Just talking win 6, like see Arizona, see Michigan. I don't see it.
Yeah, once you get to the Final Four, you're probably going to have to beat 2 elite teams this year at the top, and that's probably where they run into. Nebraska, no.
Same thing.
I don't think so, yeah.
Here's the thing with Nebraska and apart Michigan State. In the Big Ten, I mean, you look at who Nebraska has played. I mean, I can just filter this on Torque. So Nebraska, by the way, they could. What are they going to get? A 2 seed? Is that what they're projected to get?
2 or 1 right now. Yeah,
it's crazy.
So if you look at who Nebraska, well, I mean, if you look at the Big Ten and you just filter by 3-point shooting, because I'm telling you right now, Nebraska they could go on a run, but they also have. Frager got hurt. I haven't seen an update on him, but he was in a boot yesterday.
Yeah, day-to-day, but one of those longer day-to-day things with the ankle, I think.
Here's Nebraska is an enormous early upset candidate because of the way that they play. They shoot a ton of threes, and they give up a ton of threes. They don't get any offensive rebounds. They're good on the defensive glass. So it's basically a 3-point shooting competition, and the Big Ten can't shoot. So that works. For Michigan State, too, right? They give up a ton of threes, and no one can shoot in the Big Ten. I mean, if you filter by 3-point percentage, the teams in the Big Ten who can shoot, Purdue, Nebraska hasn't played them yet. Iowa, Nebraska hasn't played them yet. You start to filter down. I mean, their last Washington, Nebraska are outside the top 300. Washington and Northwestern. Rutgers, USC, Maryland, Minnesota, Minnesota, another team they're going to play on Saturday that can't really shoot. Penn State, Oregon, and Nebraska has played all these teams. So they can get away with that in the Big Ten, and they don't have the high-end athleticism as well. So great story with Nebraska, but because of the way that they play, and by the way, they're shooting 40% from 3 in conference play. Not sure they can maintain that, but it's easy. Their style actually makes sense in the Big Ten because of the lack of shooting, but once you get out of the Big Ten, might not work.
Stuck, can I want to rebut that slightly just because there's 2 wins on their schedule. I'm saying all the same things you said going into these games. I faded Nebraska in both these spots. It was at Illinois and at Indiana. Escaping wins against those teams who can shoot on the road, to me at least, made me look twice. Does that get your attention at all, or are you still skeptical?
No, I mean, I've upgraded them out of those games. But, Indiana's not an elite shooting team. They can get hot. They also led by 16 in the second half of that game.
Yep.
And every game, Tucker DeVries got in foul trouble, kind of changed the game. And then against Illinois, Illinois and Indiana are not inside the top 90 in 3-point percentage. These aren't elite shooting teams. Now they're capable. And Illinois, they lost. It was an impressive win for Nebraska. Nebraska won on the road, but Sanford was unconscious in the first half where they built a huge lead. I think he had 30 points in the first half, and then they still won at the buzzer on a crazy 3. So yeah, that gave Nebraska a bit more merit, but I still think and you look this team even in the non-conference, they didn't play anyone who can shoot the 3 either. Their non-conference was a joke. They ended up playing Oklahoma. Their best games were Oklahoma, hardest games. Oklahoma, New Mexico, Kansas State is way down, and Creighton is way down. Their non-conference was an absolute joke. So, yeah, I think it's worth noting those 2 games, which were impressive wins. The team is gritty, and they do a lot of things really well. But as far as winning a national title, I don't see it.
Kansas State's the best shooting team they played, the only team in the top 50 at 3-point percentage, and it was a 1-point game against a team that has no chance of making the NCAA tournament. So yes. That tells you.
Great point there. BYU, that's a trick. I'm going to say no, but you have the Debanza. Here's the thing: the Debanza factor.
That's the one. That's what stops me.
Right? Like a guy's gonna be a top 3 pick.
I think they can. I really think they can. I mean, they've gotten the worst 2 months possible from Moo Davis, like both on and off the court. He's just been a distraction, if anything. Like that guy's done nothing. He was one of the more marquee transfer ads possible. I think, the thing that I keep coming back to with DeBonsa and with freshmen in general, right? He's asked to do so much less on a team with Saunders and Wright than even Peterson at full strength is at Kansas, and obviously Boozer at Duke, which to me makes him a little less volatile. Like I think weirdly enough, they could win a game where DeBonsa goes cold in March, just if Rob Wright is running the show, but they have to get some answers off the bench in the next 2 months. And that's tested in league.
Yeah, that's my biggest question. What's one of my biggest questions with BYU? Number one, like away from home, can they win 6 in a row? But the depth, and they're so reliant on like DeBonsa, Saunders, and Wright, and there's just no depth. If one of them gets in foul trouble or has an off night against a good team, can they overcome that? I'd say the same thing for Texas Tech. I mean, Texas Tech has zero bench, zero. I mean, go back to that BYU game. They played. Did anyone even play besides their starting 5? Nolan Groves played 5 minutes. That's it. I mean, Tyree Bryan has been he's not doesn't even play anymore. I guess he played against Baylor a bunch, but I mean, obviously Tech has, with Anderson and Toppin, and then they're shooting, right? If Atwell they started 14 of 19 from 3 in the first half against Baylor. They're high end offense where they can just outscore anybody, and it does seem like McCasland is getting that defense to come around. That was one of my biggest questions with Tech and their high end potential. Jim, thoughts on BYU and Texas Tech and their upside?
Yeah, BYU, they're just too reliant on 3 guys, and like they just don't have anything else after that. I'm with you guys on the bench. Dawson Baker's injury, I think, has really hurt them. Just one more shooter that's not there. I'm going to buy Texas Tech as being able to win. I know they're really reliant on their top end roster too, but Luke Bamgoy and Josiah Mosley have both been practicing this week. 2 guys that were expected to be part of their top 8. And Brian played 15 minutes last game. Maybe he's starting to buy in a little more defensively. I think he's driven McCasland nuts on that end of the court this year. But if they can consolidate that top 8, get Mosley, a Villanova transfer who gives them versatility, Bamgoy is an elite shot blocker, they can get that all sewn together by March. I think that 8-man rotation can beat anybody.
And then as far as the rest, is there any other team? I mean, Vandy would be next. I don't think they have the front court
nope.
or defense. Is there any other team that you think, like does Bediako change your opinion on? So I think this is the same Alabama team. Like, this is my stance all year. Like, cool, they're fun, they can make a run maybe to the Final Four, but they do not have the defense. And if you look at like any, all those tired Ken Pom, like you need to have this profile. But it's true. You can't have a defense that ranks like 70th and win the national title, and they just don't have that defense. Bediako, I mean, the discussion of what's going on there, we'll save it for another day. But they were like number 1 in rim defense with him a while ago.
2023, number 3 defense in Ken Pom with Bediako anchoring. So
does that change your opinion on them, Jim?
If you guaranteed me the rest of the season he's there, I'd say they can win the title. I know he hasn't played with these guys. He hasn't played college in 3 years, but I think he knows the system. He's vertical rim spacer offensively, which is kind of the only thing they're missing on that end, and then fixes their defense. Bama is one, and then Stuckey, other one outside of what we mentioned is Kansas with a healthy Peterson. I think could, in theory, get there.
I agree on Kansas. And yeah, the other thing with Bama is they've had a ton of injuries. So, right, if they get their full arsenal of weapons and Bediako to help solve that rim defense. Greg, any other names that you want to mention or any other thoughts?
I had Kansas and Alabama both on the there's a world if everything falls right list, and I also had Arkansas, but I'm also willing to let you both shoot that down and just put me to bed.
It's not played in Fayetteville. That's my answer.
Fayetteville at a game?
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much. Yeah, just move the tourney to Bud Walton.
They'd win then.
Yeah.
I just love Acuff, honestly. And I don't know what Cal's doing with lineups right now. Malik Thomas can obviously get hot and hit 7 threes. I think both Richmond and Knox had big moments in the tournament a year ago. I don't know if I would call them bright lights guys or not, but you looked up, they were in the second weekend a year ago with a roster, I think, that's significantly less talented than a team with Acuff at the point. I still think you would run into issues like all of these teams we're discussing against the very best of the best, but I think they're at minimum a Final Four contender, and if they got there, I think they have a little more upside than the teams we shot down.
All right, the last one I'll make a case for. I'll make a case for Kentucky. It starts with an earthquake, and so.
Well, exploding trees across the Midwest right now, Stuck. That's a good sign for Pope.
Yeah, I will say, Kentucky. It's their rosters put that it was money not wisely spent. They've also had a ton of injuries. They just had another one, and Cam Williams broke his foot. I thought he was showing some things, and they're still trying to figure out the rotation. I think their offense has figured some things out. It's keep the ball in Aberdeen and Oweh's hands, but maybe if they're not going to. They just coming back from 17-18 and needing to shoot 40-45% from three. It's just not sustainable, and they don't have it this year, and obviously the injuries haven't helped. If they get in and they get hot from three, they could be a pesky team that makes the second weekend. That's my hope for them, but that's the ceiling. But go Cats. All right, let's get to our futures roundtable. I'll start things off. We already both kind of talked about it. I'm going to say I'm going to go Kansas Final Four, 10-1 still out there. I bought this, if you follow along in the Action Network app, a couple weeks ago at better price, but I'd go down to 10-1. It's just Darren Peterson can carry them there easily. I mean, we haven't even seen him fully healthy for a long stretch. And if they get that, and Self has started to figure some things out on the defensive end, and as they kind of refine that rotation, if you have Peterson, who looks like if Kobe went to that time, so I'm just watching him. He looks so pro ready. One of the smoothest players I've ever seen play college basketball. Everything comes so easy to him. Hasn't even been fully healthy. I mean, is he going to continue to get even better come March? So yeah, I think this year, this is the story this year is there's some star power, and a lot of it is freshman star power that can carry some of these teams to the Final Four. Could they win it all? I mean, I don't think so. I don't think that they have that, if they had to run into say Michigan and then Arizona or something, I don't necessarily think that they could win those two games, but could they get to the Final Four, especially if the bracket breaks right with Peterson? Absolutely. They are going to be battle tested as well, right? I mean, you talk about a team that's going to see a bunch of elite teams in February. They've already played some very good teams. I mean, this is a team that's played Duke, Connecticut, Tennessee, a lot of games on neutral courts, but I already mentioned their stretch in February. I mean, you're playing Arizona twice, Iowa State, Houston, BYU, Texas Tech on the road. This team will be battle tested. And if Peterson gets hot and they get hot and, kind of exceed expectations in February, this price will come way down, especially if Peterson looks fully healthy. And if they don't, I don't think the price is going to crater, and they'll still have that potential. So I'll make a case for Kansas 10-1. We'll save our thoughts for when we vote. Greg, you kind of hinted at yours with UVA.
Yeah, we touched on this one as well. Jim hit the big thing. Just since January 1st, they're the number one team in the country per Torvik. That is a super small sample size. If you want to pull it back a month earlier, call it December 1st. They're fifth in the country behind Houston, Michigan, Arizona, and then that pesky Nebraska team that can't lose. I just think this team's for real, and it's trending in the right direction. And, comparatively, if I'm going into the court to make a pitch against yours here, I think Kansas is the sexy play that has a bunch of red flags you want to ignore because of how sexy Darren Peterson is. Is Bill Self going to coach in the NCAA tournament? Is Darren going to have one of three different ailments that he currently has? Is Melvin Council going to catch fire? Not. There are a bunch of different ways I think Kansas's season could come to an end. I look at Virginia. they don't really have too many weaknesses on the surface here.
They have a pretty high floor.
Yeah, they're just really efficient from everywhere. They're pretty good on the boards, elite on the offensive boards, top 20 in both offensive and defensive efficiency at this point in the season. And again, everything is trending up. I think DeRitter's a legitimate pro and a dude, like, could be the face of a Final Four team, and I would think that makes sense. I think Malik Thomas is one of those, like, how is he still in school guards that you see on Final Four teams all the time. I think they've got youth that are going to become stars down the line, like Chance Mallory. I didn't like it at first because it didn't feel right. But the more I watch this team, I mean, you look at the stretch where they're number one in the country, it's probably the hardest stretch of schedule they're going to have until the end of February when they see Duke. I mean, on the road against Louisville, on the road against NC State, on the road against SMU, and they're number one in the country in those games. I am fully in that this team can make a run. 13-1 is good enough for me.
Yeah, when I watch them, everything looks great. My only pushback is prior to January 1st, they played nobody, like, literally nobody. I mean, they played Texas when Texas was a mess, right? And like Sean Miller was like, was doing Mick Cronin things, and like, and then they lost to Vatek to close out 2025. But their next best win was, I don't know, Northwestern on a neutral court. And then since in 2026, NC State, I didn't look what shot quality had it, but I mean, I'm assuming that was like a 10-point loss. NC State could not make an open shot in that game. Then they get Louisville, who's banged up and kind of reeling, not fully healthy. SMU was kind of a coin flip game. I mean, it was tied with a minute to go. So I could punch some holes in like what they've done since January 1st, and they really didn't do anything before then. But when you watch them, and then as far as a team like getting just to the Final Four with a good coach, and they seemingly do have a very high floor, and they're not too reliant on one player, and that rim defense is real. That'll go a long way. Jim, thoughts on UVA, and then what's your case?
Well, I'm very in on Virginia. I love them since the preseason. Team I was beating the drum for. I couldn't decide if I was going to go all in on them or NC State in the preseason as a Final Four pick, and I made the mistake of going with Will Wade. I don't think NC State's bad, but it'd look a lot better if I had picked Virginia. But they've been awesome away from home, and I think that's a huge thing to note with them. Like, really good road wins, and the fact that they offensive rebound, they interior defend, like, that stuff travels, and I think that's what makes a very compelling case for them. I'm going to dig a little further down the odds board, and maybe a lot further down the odds board. 80-1 to the Final Four for the St. Louis Billikens. I am completely in on this team.
You didn't put this in the doc, and I had a feeling you were going to do this.
I didn't. I got to keep it secret. Don't let you know what's going on. But yeah, DraftKings still has 80-1 on SLU, and I know they haven't really played anybody, and part of that's because they tried and nobody wanted to because they knew how good they were going to be. Josh Schertz, Robbie Avila's back, but they're inside the top 30 at KenPom. You look back right around this time in 2023. A little old team called Florida Atlantic was sitting 30th, and Bart Torvik through this date ends up making the Final Four with a coach who ends up this national darling. Now he's the coach of a number one team in the country. I think Josh Schertz has that kind of upside. This team has depth. That's what his Indiana State team didn't have at all. It was a 5-man team that could really suffer through some duds every once in a while. SLU doesn't have that because they've got bench scorers, they've got length, they've got massive lineup interchangeability. They score on a ton of like close twos. They're number one in the country in average 2-point attempt distance because they just get layups. Schertz talks about getting layups on no dribble, like the cut layups, that kind of stuff, drive and dish. The offense is beautiful, but they're also number 3 in the country in 2-point percentage defense. And I know that's a little bit schedule driven. They have not played a good schedule, but I think the defense is a lot better than it gets credit for because people think of offense with Schertz. I think this team is really, really good. They're they're an 8 seed in bracket matrix, and they can get up to the 6 line and avoid those 1 and 2 seeds in the second round. Suddenly 80-1 is a really, really juicy price there.
Yeah, that was going to be I was going to bring that up. You're playing, obviously 80-1, you can do this, but you're playing seed roulette because this year you do not want an 8 or 9 seed. We just talked about some of the high-end talent. I would much rather have a 10 than so like you want them to not fall in that 8 to 9 range. But I love the St. Louis team. They are super fun. Looking at the schedule, I'm trying to think like timing wise. Man, I mean, I guess it's kind of backloaded. They got VCU, Dayton, and George Mason late. So yeah, they could probably. They're still. I mean, they easily could rattle off 5 or 6 more wins, and this comes down. So timing wise, I think it's fine. All right, let's vote. You're going to hold up a 1 if you're voting for Kansas Final Four. You can't vote for your own. 2 for Virginia Final Four. 3 for St. Louis Final Four. 3, 2, 1. 3 wins.
Oh, wow. Let's go,
St.
Bills.
Louis wins. That'll be our first edition, a super long shot Final Four with the Bills. RIP to the GOAT in honor of him, Rick Majerus, who I loved. Get it done for Rick. So I got St. Louis 80-1 to make the Final Four. Please do a little dance night. Avoid the 8-9 line. All right. Very quickly before we get to the weekend looks, buy low, sell high. Greg, you're looking to sell Nebraska. I will say this is a tough spot for them. Going, to the barn. Minnesota's been pesky. They've lost to USC and Ohio State in overtime games they easily could have won. Wisconsin at the buzzer. They played Illinois pretty tight. Before then, a decent stretch. My big problem here but the reason I bring up the spot is Nebraska undefeated, Frager injury, and after this Minnesota game on the road, noon start, like kind of a sleepy game, right? Then they go Michigan, Illinois, Purdue. Like, are they peeking ahead a bit? My problem is, again, Minnesota. Now, Minnesota will shoot threes. Can they make them? That's going to be the question here, because Nebraska games are 3-point shooting contests. Minnesota does at least do a. I would say they're a decent enough defense to hang here, but they're going to have to make some shots playing Nebraska. But you're just looking to sell Nebraska overall. Do you think this is the peak of the market? By the way, they should have covered last night. Washington with a ridiculous cover. They were like down 16 with like 40 seconds to go, and Nebraska turned it over 3 times. But you're looking to sell Nebraska, Greg?
Yeah, maybe call it resentment because I was on the Huskers minus 10.5. Thank you for that backdoor 90-second finish.
Brutal.
But I think you laid out the case here. The schedule's heating up in a big way. I think this Minnesota game's a total trap spot, and I'm going to give out Minnesota as my favorite play heading into the weekend here. Also, just on that front, one thing to note here, I think against the Nebraska defense, the way they swarm anything inside, the way they make you kick out and scramble and rotate the shooters, I think you've got to have a team that's really high IQ with a great coach that can script stuff in the half court and really an unselfish team capable of high-level passing from multiple spots. Minnesota first in the country in assisted % of their field goals made. I think that's going to matter, and I think it's a good matchup. So I look at that as a really ominous spot, but you said it. At Michigan, Purdue, Illinois still coming. They still have to go out west, and they got the bad end of the coin flip where they have to get UCLA on the road and USC, who I think is a little peskier. At least you get the free win if you go to Oregon this year. And then Frager, who knows? He's in a boot. Is he going to play against Michigan? Is he going to miss a month? I don't really know. He was in tears with Connor Essegian saying prayers for him. That doesn't feel like he's back anytime soon to me. So as much as I love the Huskers, I think this could come crashing down in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, they're finally going to start playing some teams that can shoot the three. And I doubt that they're going to continue shooting 40% from three. And then because they don't get offensive rebounds, that would be very problematic. But shout out Nebraska ball for an amazing start. Jim, and buy low, sell high. Any teams you want to mention?
I want to sell high. A couple of these are just related to how they've shot since January 1st. Drexel, this is way off the radar, but in the CAA, they've covered 5 in a row, and it's because they're top 10 in the country in both 3-point percentage offense and 3-point percentage defense. And up to December 31st, they were very pedestrian in both. Like, this is outlier type stuff in a limited small sample. I would be fading the Dragons coming up here in the CAA. It's a pretty parity-driven league, and I think Drexel has played above their weight, and they're up like 100 spots in KenPom in 2.5 weeks because of the 3-point luck, and I would see that coming back down to earth soon. Buy low, kind of on the opposite end. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Auburn. They're number 5 in the SEC in offense, despite ranking 15th in three-point percentage, shooting 26%. They're number 6 in defense in the SEC, despite the dead last ranked three-point percentage defense. Caveat is that they're playing Florida this weekend, and I think Florida is still a little undervalued too. So I'm not really going to start buying low on Auburn yet. But they've had some really close games, some really bad luck late in games. I think this team's pretty undervalued right now because of the shooting splits that they've seen so far, and I think the offense is still very legit.
Yeah, I can see the Drexel fade, especially they have a stretch coming up at home where they're going to be favorites. I definitely don't mind fading them as a favorite. They play so slow.
Yep.
Home against Northeastern this Saturday. Does that game get played? I don't know. I never know who's going to play for Northeastern, but I definitely can see that starting the Drexel fade there. All right, I'll get into some of mine as we talk weekend bets. So let's get to the weekend rapid fire. Usually 3 to 5 we'll give out and just go until we don't have any more left. I'll start. My favorite bet of the weekend, obviously this is all line dependent, and I'm trying to pick spot games where the spot tax won't be like 7 points, which is what it seemingly is on Saturdays. I'm going to go with Texas at home against Georgia. I'm not a believer in this Georgia team and this offense, and there's a number of things I like about this spot and matchup for Texas. Number one, Georgia presses at one of the highest rates in the country. Texas is an elite press offense. I also think that their wings will have an enormous size advantage in isolation in a number of spots against Georgia, who can be very undersized on the perimeter. You hope that Texas gets a better whistle, which they have at home, because this could come down to just foul trouble with the bigs. But I think Texas can dominate the offensive glass. They can mitigate Georgia on the defensive glass. I'm sorry, on the offensive board, on their side of the floor. So I like this spot. I like the matchup. I think Texas can keep Georgia out of transition. They do a pretty good job in that aspect as well. And Georgia's schedule has been pretty easy to date. I mean, they've played like 2 or 3 top 30 teams. Texas has played 8. And in those games, they've had a top 20 offense. And you might look at that Kentucky game and say, I was not really that impressed. I mean, Kentucky went 31 of 34 from the line. They could not miss a free throw. And they dominate Texas at the line. This is a Texas team that gets to the line as much as any team in the country. And Heidi didn't play in the first half and basically was walking around with a sick bag in the second half. And he played like 8 minutes and literally did nothing. He should be healthier. He's actually number 1 on the team in adjusted overall efficiency. When he's out there healthy, the spacing for everyone else is so much better. But I think it's a pretty good matchup for Texas. I would love to get -1 or better. Not sure we'll get it, but that's probably my favorite spot and matchup of the weekend. Greg, you mentioned Minnesota. Anything else you want to mention or add on to the Gophers?
I'll jump in with a replacement for Minnesota since I already laid that out. I'm actually going to take a look at Maryland pending the number against Michigan State, which may be the grossest bet of all time. However, this was a schedule spot that I circled with a lot of these Big Ten teams from the Midwest last year. When you return from the West Coast trip, how are the legs? What is the number? Can you blow teams out? Are you even interested in blowing teams out? I don't know that Michigan State cares about running up the score against a Buzz Williams team at home a week before they play Michigan. I just don't think that's going to happen. Some of Michigan State's flattest performances this year have come against their less marquee opponents. They've started very, very slow against teams outside the KenPom top 100 pretty much all year. So I would look to Maryland first half. Michigan State's been so good at wearing teams down, but I think even if you get the number, if it's anywhere near the KenPom projected spread of 18 to 20, I'll probably be on the underdog in that game.
Yeah, my only concern with Maryland games is like if Coit doesn't go off, yeah, it gets scary quick. Like if he has an off game, but I can see that. Greg, sorry, I called you Greg. Jim, what do you got?
I'll start with San Diego State on the road at UNLV. This is kind of a very reactionary to last game, but San Diego State had a heartbreaker, probably arguably undeserved loss at Grand Canyon. High knees really messed them up on the final call that they lost on 2 free throws in the final 2 seconds. High knees, the referee, Jeffrey Anderson. Sorry to call you out. And then UNLV is coming off this insane, incredible win at Utah State, the best team in the conference. San Diego State's been awesome since January 1st, top 20 in the country. They're number 1 in the league in 2-point percentage defense. They look like a Dutcher defense again. I know Magoon Gwath might miss this game. He was out for the Grand Canyon one, but they almost won that game too against a better opponent. UNLV is as erratic as they come. They will lose to anybody at home. They can play up at times, but I think coming off their big win, I don't expect a second straight strong performance, and San Diego State's going to be very angry given the way that game ended. I like the Aztecs on the road in Vegas.
I agree. I had this one circled. I'm hoping we can get like a reasonable price here because
hopefully it comes down with Gwath out. Give me 3.5 or something. That sounds great.
That because even if you look at UNLV, this stretch, it's been their best stretch of the year. They beat Boise State in overtime. Buchanan didn't play for Boise. They beat San Jose State. I mean, San Jose State, their entire team's out every game. I don't even know who played for San Jose State that game. And then they played Utah State. That was like a 20-point shot quality loss. Utah State, who's very erratic, by the way. Utah State was 17 of 31 from the line, and they shot 7 of 24 from 3. And UNLV was 21 of 25 from the line and shot 50% from 3. So, and Utah State is just, you never know. That team, they confuse me. They're very inconsistent. So there's some like caveats here in this stretch that I'm not buying this UNLV team by any stretch. And I think San Diego State can shut them down. So I think that's a good one. I'll get in the weeds here. Like, let's throw some ugly ones out. Army against Navy. Can I get double digits here? You mentioned, Drexel, Jim. I mean, since December 1st, teams are shooting 25% from 3 against Navy, and it's at extreme volume. They're 308th in 3-point rate. No one can make a 3. And by the way, you want to talk about a team that hasn't played a soul. It's Navy. And like the way that they play, like the Army doesn't have any size, but neither does Navy. This game will be just like ugly. And what does Army do? They just shoot threes. That's the only thing they can do. And they get defensive rebounds. So they're going to shoot a ton of threes here. Obviously, they could just be stone cold, but teams aren't going to shoot 25% from 3 against Navy forever. They give up a ton of threes. Army's going to just pack it in here, get defensive rebounds, and I think they can make enough threes to keep this close. This will be like the Air Force Navy game. I think Navy wins by 5 or so. So yeah, I like Army. I mean, this is Army, by the way, every one of their games goes to overtime, which would obviously be good if we're catching double digits here. They played 6 overtime games, I think, already. But Navy, here's who they've beat this year. Presbyterian, Washington, Maryland, like Washington of Maryland, NJIT, Gardner-Webb, Delaware State, Air Force, Coppin, Rosemont, Boston, Holy Cross, Bucknell, Lafayette, Lehigh in double overtime, and Holy Cross. Their best win is Presbyterian. No joke. That's their best win on the year. This first game of the year, Presbyterian. So I think Army can keep this within double digits. Greg?
That's gross. Hearing that out loud. It's gross.
Army Navy, baby. Get excited.
It's gross. I'm going to go sexy again. I'm going to go BYU. This is the BYU Utah round 2. Crazy. These two teams are playing within 2 weeks of each other. It was a thriller on the road the first time, came down to the wire. But this is Kevin Young with a week to prep, pissed off of that terrible second half against Texas Tech. I just think this is a come out and run a team out of a gym spot for Devonta and Saunders. I don't really think there's much to this beyond that. I think back to that first game against Utah, just some confusing rim defense stuff. Terrence Brown popped off, but I expect BYU to be much better. This is a spot for that. So just give me the schedule spot bounce back.
This is the schedule. I've had the scheduling spot circled on Arizona. Hopefully it's not, the line doesn't come out like BYU -4. But I've had this. I mean, you look at Arizona, you assume they're going to blow out West Virginia. But Arizona was at TCU, right? Then they come home for Arizona State, war, go to UCF across the country, ends up being quite a war, come back, play a physical Cincy team. I mean, that was a close game up until 10 minutes to go. Then, you're going to play a physical West Virginia game, and then 48 hours after that stretch, turn around and go play in altitude. So that this is the scheduling spot for an undefeated Arizona team. BYU team is now Arizona did win in Provo last year. This game's on Monday night, by the way, and then BYU returned the favor in Tucson. But yeah, as long as we don't get a ridiculous spot tax, I agree with you on the Cougars. Jim, what else you got?
I'm going to stay in the Rocky Mountains here. Colorado hosting UCF is another one where UCF's going across the country. I have a hard time seeing them super dialed. I mean, they were at Iowa State in the middle of the week, and they're coming off playing Arizona, Iowa State. So, hey, the competition level goes down, but you go to Elevation, a team or something they're really not used to. And Colorado's been actually pretty feisty. Like, they really almost beat Texas Tech at home. They played with Kansas for 40 minutes. And on the road, Cincinnati, West Virginia, two tough teams. They were battling in both of those. I think they've got a nice home court. It's a young team that's improving. They play a couple of freshmen that have been really good this year.
Isaiah Johnson's a player.
He's awesome. And McKaylee, the other freshman, is rock solid in the paint too. So I'm buying Colorado, finally getting it done after 4 straight losses. And I think UCF is a team I'm generally fading also as they get into the tougher parts of Big 12 play, and going to Elevation randomly is one of those spots.
Greg, you got anything left before I rattle off some ugly ones?
I got one more. I'm going Florida here against Auburn on Saturday, just solely off of the remembrance of what happened to Auburn when they saw similar front courts to Florida's. I mean, Michigan, 30-point win, Arizona, 29-point win. Now, obviously, Michigan, Arizona. But I just think that's a weakness of this Auburn team. I hate their answers inside. I think it's a personnel issue. And I think this gets ugly with a Florida team that's rolling right now.
Here's some I'll throw out some more ugly ones. Loyola Chicago. Is this the bottom? I mean, they're getting healthier. They could get, I think Dotson will be back. They got a couple guys back last game, because they've been playing basically with out of point guard, and I mean the rotation has gotten pretty bleak. But
can I recommend first half with them, because their last two second halves
in the second, they lose by the second half like 50.
Yep.
So they're playing a Duquesne team that's they're coming off of a game against St. Louis. This is a sleepy spot. They were right there with St. Louis at the end. But this has to be close to the bottom of the middle of Chicago. They started the season 99th on KenPom. They are now outside the top 300. And this might be a problem with Drew Valentine. I mean, he inherited that Moser team in 22, and they finished top 30. You look at 2023, they started 59th. They dropped at one point to 270th. 2024 started 74th. At one point, they dropped to 140, 150. And last year, they started 78th. They dropped outside the top 150. Now, he has been good against the spread in conference play, and that's usually – so this team, for whatever reason – now, this year, a lot of it is injuries, but they bottom out and then kind of start to rise. So I might be looking to buy Loyola Chicago here. Jim, what else you got left?
What I liked with I mentioned the schedule changes, and for the record, I want to shout out Rocco Miller on Twitter. He's got a comprehensive list of all of the weekend schedule changes due to weather. So if anybody's curious about it, get to Rocco's Twitter. He's got a massive list, and he's constantly updating it. But Belmont is hosting Illinois State. This game's moving from Sunday at 3 to Saturday at noon. And I think that's an advantage for the home team, as I mentioned at the top. Illinois State's off 2 big wins, including midweek against Northern Iowa. But Belmont's the best team in this league, and for giving me kind of a short home spread, 4 or 5. Belmont's number 1 in 2-point percentage offense and defense in league play in Missouri Valley. I think that's pretty sustainable. They're owed a little defensive regression in terms of 3-point percentage. So I like that. And they might get Nick McLean back. He's kind of like game to game, day to day, every single game, their starting point guard. They've been good without him, but if he's back in there, this team is kind of a juggernaut offensively. So I'm liking the Bruins there with that adjusted schedule against Illinois State Saturday.
Staying the Valley, I might look at Murray State on the road at Northern Iowa. Speaking of regression, I mean, no one can make a 3 against Northern Iowa. Murray State can certainly do that. coming off a loss. Northern Iowa not fully healthy. I don't like their offense. Now, I mean, they have lost 5 straight. Like, it's spot wise, it's not great, but I just don't think that they can put up enough offense to keep up with Murray. So I might look at the Racers there. Any thoughts there, Jim?
No Tristan Smith for Northern Iowa. They've been kind of hopeless. He is like the trigger man in the paint, athleticism, play through him. And he's missed the last 5, and they've gotten, haven't been overly competitive in any of the 5.
Yeah, only other ones I have that I'll mention, Jim, and I'll get what you have left. Let's see. Is there anything I missed? Purdue? I don't know what kind of price we're going to get. Did you like that? Was one of the ones.
That was one of the ones I had written down.
All right, talk to me, Jim.
The risk is what Greg mentioned, the team coming back from the West Coast in the Big Ten, but they're coming off a loss. So I think you get a fairly locked in Purdue team. And Illinois without Kylan Boswell, I think that really hurts against Braden Smith. Like, Illinois wants to play drop coverage with Boswell chasing around ball screens and staying in the grill of Smith, and he's not going to be there. It's probably going to fall on Wagler to do that, who's been brilliant, especially offensively, but that's adding a really big task to his defensive assignment if he has to do that. So you get Purdue by low. They've won 5 of the last 6 against Illinois. I know a lot of those involved Zach Edey, so that's, maybe take that for what it's worth. But I think short price there, maybe it's more like 4 or 5 because of Boswell, and Trey Kaufman-Renn is kind of on a milk carton right now, but I still like Purdue there.
Yeah, I think it's a good matchup for Purdue's offense. Now, Illinois' defense is a little different than last year, and they have a little more upside because of it. Like, they're not just as purely strict drop as usual, but I do think they missed Boswell here, and it's a good matchup for the Purdue offense. And if you look, I mean, Illinois has been impressive. Since they lost to Nebraska, they beat Missouri, Southern, Penn State, Rutgers, Iowa with the flu, Northwestern, Minnesota, and Maryland. So, and now they don't have Boswell. I think you get a focused Purdue effort at home.
Can I tack on to that one real quick? Yeah. So I like the over in this game, and I totally agree with your guys' scout on Purdue. But a couple of interesting things going on with Illinois totals. They've gone like 13 of 17 unders. They're playing dramatically slower than they have in Brad Underwood's entire tenure there. However, I was watching the entirety of Illinois, Maryland to see what they looked like without Kylan. They were faster because Andrei Stojakovic just gets the ball and goes. And they let him go, and they're going to let him go more than they normally let him go in this game because Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith are going to spend time on Andrei Stojakovic. And they're going to try and get those guys in foul trouble. And obviously, if Braden picks up 2, this bet is cooked if you're on the over. But I just think in general, in half-court situations, we just saw UCLA torch Purdue with this for 40 minutes. Tommy Avicic pick and pops are going to be wide open in this game against the Purdue front court. They're too slow. On the flip side, you guys nailed it. They don't have Kylan to chase around screens and play drop. I think both teams are really going to struggle to find answers defensively in this game, mixed with a little bit faster of a tempo from the Illinois side. Give me the over.
5 of the last 6 have gone over between these two. Would also add that.
Other ones I want to make a case for Kansas State, but their whole team is hurt. Like, can Haggerty score 40, basically? And I think UCI, I think Irvine gets their revenge on my Tritons. We'll see how the games go tonight, but yep. I don't think the Tritons match up as well as they did last year. Any other ones that I have? San Francisco. Can I potentially interest you in San Francisco against Gonzaga? I don't know. I don't know if he's going to play, but Gonzaga's kind of turned in maybe the under's the look, but I think if the under hits, then that helps San Francisco catching a big number. But San Francisco, they're not looking to score at the rim, which you're not going to do against Gonzaga. Gonzaga's kind of turned into an under team that has like a higher defensive ceiling and lower offensive ceiling without Huff and Ike. And you have Gurlison, who I think is a good coach. He's 15-3 against the spread with 6+ days of prep. Got an extended prep here. Can they hit enough shots to stay within a big number? I think so. It's not the worst matchup. But, I mean, yeah, it's scary fading Gonzaga. Student section's back at the kettle. But those are my last looks. Any final thoughts, Jim, or any thoughts on any of those?
I just had Wisconsin on Sunday. They're up by 1,000 on Penn State right now as we record this. But hosting USC. USC is kind of figuring it out right now. They just added Elijah Arenas back in the lineup, and he was terrible against Northwestern. And they're trying to integrate Cam Woods, who they added in the midseason. Baker Mazzara fouled out in 13 minutes, and Musselman was like about ready to rip his head off, which I think was the most predictable player-coach feud of the season. And Wisconsin's been really good at the Kohl Center against solid competition. And you got the West Coast team coming 2 time zones over into a snowstorm, frigid weekend. I think USC can't get out of there fast enough. I like Wisconsin it's -5 at Ken Pom. If it's like 7, I'd still lay it.
All right. That'll do it for us. Favorite bets. By the way, episodes, this is the first episode. We wanted to go lay of the land. Episodes generally be like 45 to 50 minutes. This one, first one, a little longer. We will spend more time on the weekend looks than we will high level, but there's also like flows, snow. There's more uncertainty with this weekend's card. But favorite bets of the weekend, we'll always just wrap up with that. Obviously line dependent, but Greg, you like Minnesota. I'm going to go with Texas. Jim, what would be your favorite look line dependent?
San Diego State. I think they smash UNLV.
I would agree. All right. That'll do it for this episode of the Big Bets on Campus podcast. Thanks to Jim and Greg for joining me. Thanks to our producer, David, on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for joining us. Can't wait to go on this ride with you guys and everyone listening through the end of the tournament. Guys, 3-Man Weave will be back early week. We'll also have our midweek episode. We'll be back with a live show starting next Saturday and every Saturday through the end of the dance. Make sure you tune in there, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. We'll catch you next Thursday night. We'll add another future and preview the weekend card. Good luck on all of your wagers this weekend. We'll catch y'all later. Cheers.